If you're anything like me, you're probably very deep in the Deltarune community, and you're most likely also suffering from the awaiting in Deltarune Chapter 5 insanity. One look at my channel and it's very clear how deep in this insanity I am. Since August of last year, I've been finding the night pretty much daily, and I am now coming up on day 300. And as Insect would have it, this also coincides very nicely with the 1-year anniversary of Chapter 3 and 4. So I thought to myself, I want to make a unique video to celebrate this. And I thought to myself, a fun challenge could be to see, is it possible to survive the night without moving? And, well... yeah, so that was the night's second attack, party at full health and defending, and the Shadow Mantle on Susie. So clearly defeating the knight without moving is impossible. However, as this is supposed to be a special video to celebrate some things, I'm not just going to call it a day there and end the video. So strap in as I celebrate 300 days of fighting the knight and Chapter 3 and 4's anniversary by getting sassed by Gaster for dying over and over again as I attempt to answer the following question. Which of the knight's attacks can you survive without moving? Before we start, let's lay down a few base perimeters. First of all, the save file I've been using for experimenting and gathering most of the footage you see in this video is a recruit everyone save. So no weird route or getting stronger or anything like that. In this save, all darkness have been recruited, every boss fight has been solved through as peaceful methods as there is, and so on. That means that there's no increase in health beyond what you get from sealing the fountains. In terms of equipment, pretty much the majority of the Deltarune fandom knows by now that the Shadow Mantle halves the damage dealt by the knight to whoever is wearing it. So the general strategy to survive the night tends to be to put the Shadow Mantle on Susie, as she has the largest health pool. That is what we will do for this video as well. In terms of other equipment, defense have been prioritized, while attack, magic or other bonuses are ignored for this specific challenge. And to increase the chances of survival further, defending will be the prioritized action to take. For some of the knight's attack, defending is going to be vital to be able to survive it. While for others, if you have high enough health, that's going to be enough. So, let's move on to actually look at the knight's different attacks. Just like with the Shadow Mantle, most of the fandom are familiar with the knight's attacks by now. The knight have 5 different attacks in a set pattern, ending with a full screen attack. As you progress through the fight, the attacks get different versions. Most of them are more difficult, with one outliner. Some of the attacks hits the entire party, while some focuses on one party member at a time. Overall, the bullets do around the same amount of damage, but for the multi-attacks ones, it's split between the party, thus giving those attacks a higher survival odds. Meanwhile, the ones targeting just party member is a pretty much guaranteed swoon, especially if your name is Ralsei. And now with that out of the way, let's tackle the attacks in order. The very first attack, the bullets take the shapes of stars that are being shot out from the knight's finger in a sort of cone-shaped formation. The stars stay within the cone but is being pushed towards the back of the box, where after a while, the stars explode and shoots up projectiles in 5 different directions. The player is also getting pushed back. The second time the attack shows up, it's practically the same as the first time. The only difference between the first and second time is the intensity and speed of the star bullets, but this very much comes down to RNG. The third time, there are less stars, but the projectiles turn red and track the player's location. So if you don't move, every projectile will hit you where you're not protected by invisibility frames. Now, unless you do the mistake everyone did when finding the knight for the first time, it's a guaranteed survival. It's the first attack, the party is at full health, damage is split between the party, and if you defend, you're very likely to come out of this with very good health depending on RNG. Hell, if you're really lucky, you might even no-hit this one. The same pretty much applies for the second time you face this attack. Depending on your skill and the healing items, the big difference is how high your health is going to be. But with decent health, it's high survival chance for this one as well. The same applies for the third round. Even with the projectiles striking you, the low damage and the visibility frames makes it so if Susie is defending and have good health, it is survivable. Now of course, all that high survival odds of the first attack goes straight out the window with the second attack. The swords. Swords spawn outside of the box with their very sharp edges pointed straight at you. And if you move, they track you. That's till the moment that they're fired off, in which they go in a straight line from where they were fired. So if you don't move, then every single one is guaranteed to hit you. At the high single target damage, and anyone not wearing the Shadow Mantle is a 2-hit goner. And the second time the sword attack shows up, it's even worse. For this time, you also have swords circling you, and the circle is moving even if you don't. There is also a third version, which you can get if you get through all of the knight's attacks without dealing enough damage to trigger the final attack. This attack works the same as the first version. The swords just move very much faster. So you're about as gone as a certain lost girl. So let's move on to post-death. For the knight's third attack, the box splits into two and shoots off these teardrop-shaped bullets. The slash for the box can be vertical or horizontal, but for the first round, it's always the same direction. The second time you encounter this attack, the slash can change between vertical and horizontal. And the third time you encounter it, it even adds diagonal. No matter which direction the slash is, the soul gets pushed from the middle, and the teardrops cover the entire box, leaving no safe place. The teardrops themselves does quite significant damage to a single party member, and if you get caught in the slash, it's even higher damage. However, the second round the teardrops themselves does less damage, but you have a higher risk of getting caught in the slash. However, the attacks are still survivable, but you need to be at full health, have the Shadow Mantle on Susie, have everyone shielding, and have a bit of good luck. Bit of a personal tangent here, but I don't know what it is about this attack that just makes my brain short circuit. This is generally the one attack I struggled with the most. And for the knight's fourth attack, it is the dreaded sword corridor. Or at least it was the dreaded sword corridor pre-nerf. You can collect your I beat the pre-nerf and all I got was this button at the checkout. For the attack, swords spawn in a line at the top and bottom of the box, flying towards the back, creating a corridor. The swords move up and down, thus making the corridor move up and down with them. For this stage of the attack, there is barely any invisibility frames between hits, making so being in the sword's path a very quick way to drain a single party member's health, even if they are defending. For the second stage of the attack, the sword spawns at various points outside of the box, with red lines marking where they go. The second time you face this attack, instead of creating the corridor, the sword creates a circle. And you remember how I earlier mentioned that every attack gets more difficult as the second version comes, with one outliner? Well... that footage was literally the first recording I got for that attack for this video, and it was a no-hit. So for the second turn, it's obviously very high survival odds. But for the first one, it comes down to RNG, with how long the corridor remains in the middle, and it don't immediately throw you into the sword's paths and keep you there. As mentioned earlier, this one was much worse pre-nerf, as the sword's hitbox were kinda messed up. For the fifth attack, the knight slashes clean across the box, marked by these red lines. At first it's just one line, but as you progress through this attack, more and more shows up. The spawn point for the center of the slashes is always the player's location at the moment of spawn. The center don't continue to track the player like the swords do, but the red lines will spin before settle on where the slashes will be. The second time you encounter this attack, it's already at max slashes. The third version is automatically triggered if you deal enough damage to progress to the final attack. It can also, however, show up as a random attack later if you haven't dealt enough damage to trigger the final attack. At first, the third attack works exactly as the second round, before it goes to there being only one slash. However, this one slash moves much faster as it creates the well-established Toby Fox circle attack, as the knight is basically done with your bullshit. For this attack, it deals damage to the entire party, and as the center is spawned on the player's location, with no moving, it's guaranteed to hit every single turn. With this, even at full health and defending, Chris and Ralsei is always guaranteed to go down. However, for Susie, along with defending, it is enough that she has a health of around 100, and she will make it through all three versions of the attack. If you've gone through all of these attacks and still haven't dealt enough damage to trigger the final full screen attack, the past attacks will show up in random order, bullets firing off much faster. And so at last, we have reached the knight's final full screen attack. The knights take the central stage, pulling star-shaped bullets and the player towards the center. At first, the stars spawn in random patterns before they start going in a spiral, creating another certified Toby Fox circle attack. Then the knight shoots off the stars and the player towards the edge of the screen, followed by the stars exploding and shooting off projectiles. And finally, the knight slashes clean across the screen. This one works very differently from the other attacks, as what equipment you have or whatever you're defending or not does not matter. Even the Shadow Mantle makes no difference. Every time you get hit, 40 points of damage is dealt to each of the characters. That is until a character reaches less than 40 points. At that time, the next attack will bring them down to 1 HP. The next time they get hit, it will be over for them. And so with that, even before starting the attack, you can calculate how many hits you can take before a character is down. For Chris and Ralsei, it both takes 5 hits for them to be gone, and for Susie it takes 6, meaning that you can survive 5 hits before this one is over. And with the way that is structured, you have barely even gotten halfway through the attacks before that happened, thus making the final full screen attack impossible to survive. And there we have it with the final results. Out of 15 attacks, no hits are theoretically possible on 3 of them. Out of 15 attacks, 11 are survivable. Some of these require you to defend or have high health, and other just low damage and you have high survival odds. And a total of 4 are total party kills. Now, there probably are some factors that could have changed how much damage characters could take. As for example, other equipment could give bigger odds. And of course, if you are on Snowgrave or a getting stronger route, that will also have a positive impact as you have a higher health bar. Though, however, as they are a total of 4 different total party kills, and one of them being the full screen attack, and the very way that one is structured, I would say it is impossible to beat the knight without moving. With a little bit of critical thinking or analysis such, I think you at most would make it to maybe the third attack, just based on how much damage the second one does, and then you need to be defending or having high health to survive the third one, so you're going to have to pick there between defending and healing, so you're gonna have very bad odds going into the third attack, like if you even manage to survive the second one in the first place. Anyway, now we have which of the attacks are survivable, and if you're struggling with defeating the knight, maybe this also can be a little bit of a guide for you to know which attacks to be worried about. If you watched this far, thank you so much for sticking around. this is the very first time I've ever done a video like this. So obviously there's gonna be a lot of beginner's mistake or things I need to learn and such, so feedback is greatly appreciated. I did enjoy doing this, even though I struggled quite hard with some parts. But I just really wanted to make something special, considering that I've been fighting the knight for 300 days, which was just something I started with because I thought it would be a fun way to challenge myself. And then I realized last week that that day 300 and the anniversary for chapter 3 and 4 would like happen like just about the same time. And when I realized that, I was like, well, now I have to make something big. Like, I have had so much fun this year and just been enjoying being Deltarune so much, and chapter 3 and 4 have such a special place in my heart. And we're only halfway through the story, but judging for where Deltarune is going, I would very much say that this is, by the time that we have the entire story, Deltarune is bound to be my favorite game ever. This means so much to me, and I've been having so much fun. And, well, hopefully we don't need to wait long before we get any news of chapter 5. Anyway, until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening, depending on the time zone. And hopefully, soon the insanity will be worse when chapter 5 arrives.